The restaurant went silent the moment the little girl walked through the door. She could not have been older than 7. Her shoes were untied, her backpack hung crooked on one shoulder, and her small hand gripped a folded piece of paper like it was the only solid thing left in the world. 2 men in dark suits stood near the entrance, trained to stop anyone who did not belong. Neither of them moved. Something about the way she walked, calm, certain, like she had rehearsed this 100 times, made them step aside instead. She crossed the marble floor without looking at anyone else in the room. Every table around her held someone important, someone dangerous, someone who mattered in ways ordinary people never saw. None of that mattered to her. She had one destination, and she walked straight to it. Damien Cross was mid-sentence when he noticed the room had changed. His men had gone quiet. The soft clink of glasses had stopped. He looked up, expecting trouble of the kind he was used to handling. Instead, he saw a child standing beside his table, staring up at him, with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. "Are you Damien?" she asked. The question alone was enough to make the men around him tense. Nobody said his first name in a room like this without permission. But this was a child, and children did not know the rules. "I am," he said carefully. "Who are you?" "My name is Lily." She held out the folded paper. "My mommy told me to give you this, if she ever disappeared." For a moment, nobody in the room breathed. Damien looked at the paper, then at the girl, then back at the paper. He reached out slowly and took it from her small hand. His fingers, hands that had signed off on things most people would never speak of out loud, trembled slightly as he unfolded it. The handwriting hit him, before the words did. He knew it instantly. The careful loops, the way the letter E curved just slightly to the left. He had not seen that handwriting in 8 years, but some things never leave a person's memory, no matter how much time passes. The note was short. "If you are reading this, something has happened to me, and I could not come back for her. Her name is Lily. She is your daughter. Please keep her safe. I am sorry I never told you. I thought I was protecting her by staying away. I was wrong to keep this from you, but I was never wrong about loving her, or about believing you would do the right thing if it ever came to this. Elena." Damien read it twice. Then a third time, the restaurant, the men waiting on his orders, the meeting that had consumed his attention only minutes before, all of it disappeared. There was only the paper in his hand, and the little girl standing in front of him, watching him with the same patient, careful eyes her mother once had. "Where is your mother?" he asked, his voice lower than he intended. Lily's chin trembled, just slightly, before she caught herself. "She didn't come to pick me up from school today. Mrs. Palmer, the school helper, called the number my mommy gave her." Nobody answered. "Then a man I never saw before came to get me instead, and Mrs. Palmer wouldn't let him take me, so she called my mommy's emergency contact number instead. The number was for my aunt, but my aunt doesn't live in this city anymore, so the school called the second number my mommy left, just in case." "And that number was for me?" Lily shook her head. "No. The second number was for a taxi company. My mommy always said if she was ever gone and I had no one else, I should take a taxi straight to this restaurant and ask for a man named Damien. She said everyone here would know your name. She said you would help me." Damien felt something crack open in his chest, something he had buried a long time ago under years of careful control and calculated decisions. Elena had planned for this. Not just planned, but trusted him, after everything, after leaving without a word, after keeping a child from him for 7 years. She had trusted that if the day ever came, he would not turn this little girl away. He knelt down so he was at her eye level, something the men around him had never seen him do for anyone. "You did exactly the right thing," he said gently. "You are very brave. Do you understand that?" Lily nodded, but her lower lip was shaking now, the bravery finally cracking under the weight of the day. "Is my mommy going to be okay?" Damien did not have an answer for that. He looked past her toward Marcus, his closest and most trusted man, who had already moved to stand near the door, phone in hand, waiting for instructions. "Clear the room," Damien said quietly. "Now. Everyone out except our people." Marcus did not question it. Within 2 minutes, the restaurant had emptied of every guest except staff who worked for Damien directly. Waiters folded their notepads. A pianist stopped mid-song and slipped out through a side door. The world outside the restaurant kept moving, but inside, everything had rearranged itself around one small girl and the note she had carried across the city alone. Damien pulled out a chair for Lily and sat her down gently. He crouched in front of her again, keeping his voice as calm as he could manage despite the storm building inside him. "I need you to tell me everything," he said. "Everything you remember about today. Can you do that for me?" Lily nodded slowly. This morning was normal. Mommy made me breakfast. She walked me to school like always. She kissed my head and said she loved me, same as every day. She said she had a work thing after school, and that I should wait for her by the front gate like usual. Lily paused, twisting her fingers together in her lap. But she never came. She always comes. She has never been late before. Not once. Did she say anything unusual this morning? Anything different from normal? Lily thought hard, her small face scrunched in concentration. She kept looking out the window before we left. She usually doesn't do that. And she made me repeat the taxi plan before I left for school, even though we already went over it 100 times before. She made me say it back to her 3 times. I thought that was weird, but I didn't say anything. Damien absorbed every word. Elena had sensed something coming. She had known, or at least suspected, that today might be the day her carefully built life would fall apart, and she had made sure her daughter was ready for it. "You said your mommy is a nurse," Damien said, remembering fragments of what little Lily had shared. "Do you know where she works?" "Riverside Clinic," Lily answered immediately. "She works there almost every day. Sometimes she works late if someone is very sick." Damien looked up at Marcus, who was already writing the name down. "Get eyes on that clinic," Damien said. "Find out who saw her last, what time she left, if she left with anyone, if anyone was watching the building today. I want answers within the hour." Marcus nodded and stepped away, phone pressed to his ear before he even reached the door. Damien turned his attention back to Lily. She looked exhausted, the adrenaline of the day finally beginning to fade into the kind of tiredness only children carry, deep and complete and impossible to hide. "You must be hungry," he said. "When did you eat last?" "Lunch," she admitted. "I didn't want to stop for food. I wanted to give you the note first." Something about that answer nearly broke him. A 7-year-old girl, hungry and scared and alone, had still prioritized her mission over her own needs, because her mother had trained her to understand what mattered most in a crisis. He signaled to one of the staff still lingering near the kitchen. "Bring her something to eat, something simple, and something warm to drink." While they waited, Damien studied her more closely. She had Elena's eyes, the same shade of soft brown, the same way of studying a person carefully before deciding whether to trust them, but there was something in her expression, in the set of her jaw, that was unmistakably his own. "Lily," he said carefully, "did your mother ever tell you anything about me?" "About who I am?" Lily nodded slowly. "She said you were someone very important. She said you were strong, and that you would protect people you cared about no matter what it cost you. She said one day I might need to find you, and if that day came, I shouldn't be scared." "Did she ever tell you why we weren't together? Why I never knew about you?" Lily shook her head. "She just said it was complicated. She said grown-up things are sometimes complicated in ways kids don't need to understand yet. But she never said anything bad about you. Never once." Damien sat back slightly, processing the weight of that. Even after everything, even after disappearing from his life without explanation, Elena had never poisoned their daughter against him. She had left a door open, quietly, patiently, for 7 years, in case this exact moment ever arrived. Marcus returned a few minutes later, his expression unreadable, but his eyes carrying urgency. "The clinic confirms she left work around 4 this afternoon," he said. "Security footage shows her walking to her car in the parking garage. After that, the footage goes dark. Someone disabled the cameras in that section about 90 seconds before she reached her vehicle." Damien's jaw tightened. "That's not random. Someone planned this." "There's more," Marcus continued, lowering his voice even though the room had already been cleared. "One of the clinic staff mentioned a man had been asking questions about Elena over the past week. Said he claimed to be an old friend trying to reconnect. Nobody thought much of it at the time." Damien felt the pieces beginning to align into a shape he did not want to see. Someone had been watching Elena, Someone had planned this carefully, disabling cameras, choosing the right moment, waiting until she was alone. He looked back at Lily, who was now eating slowly, her eyes drifting toward the window every few seconds, as if she expected her mother to appear at any moment. "I promise you," Damien said quietly, kneeling beside her again. "I will find your mother. I will not stop until she is home safe with you. Do you believe me?" Lily studied his face for a long moment, the same careful evaluation her mother used to give him years ago. Finally, she nodded. "Mommy said you would help," she said simply. "She was right about everything else. I think she's right about you too." Damien stood and turned to Marcus, his expression hardening into the focused calm that had built his entire world from nothing. "Get everyone we have," he said. "I want the clinic's full security footage pulled before anyone else can touch it. I want Elena's home checked, her phone traced, her car located. Whoever did this made a mistake by choosing today. They had no idea what they just started." As his men scattered to carry out his orders, Damien looked down at the folded note still in his hand, Elena's careful handwriting staring back at him like a message from another lifetime. 7 years of silence, 7 years of not knowing, and now a daughter he never met and a woman he never stopped thinking about were both depending on him in ways he had never imagined. He knelt beside Lily one more time before leaving her in the care of his sister, who arrived within minutes, ready to keep her safe, while he began the search that would consume every resource he had. "I'll be back soon," he told her. "You're safe here, I promise." Lily reached out and squeezed his hand, small fingers wrapping around his in a grip far stronger than her size suggested. "Find her," she whispered, "please." Damien nodded once, the weight of that single word settling into his chest like a stone. "I will," he said, "no matter what it takes." And as he walked out into the cold evening air, phone already pressed to his ear, giving orders that would set an entire organization into motion, one thought repeated itself over and over in his mind. Somewhere in the city, Elena was out there, missing, possibly in danger, and for the first time in 8 years, he had a reason bigger than himself to bring her home. His sister, Grace, watched him leave from the doorway of the private room where Lily now sat, a warm blanket draped over her small shoulders, her half-finished plate pushed aside. Grace had raised 2 children of her own and understood immediately what she was looking at, a little girl running on nothing but courage, holding herself together, because falling apart was not an option yet. "Come here, sweetheart," Grace said softly, sitting down beside her. "Do you want to tell me about your mommy? I would love to hear about her." Lily hesitated at first, the way children do when a stranger, even a kind one, asks them to open up about something painful. But something about Grace's steady voice reminded her of her mother, and slowly, the words began to come. "She reads to me every night before bed," Lily said, "even when she's really tired from work. She never skips it. And she sings this one song. It's not a real song. She made it up when I was a baby. And she still sings it, even though I'm not a baby anymore." "That sounds like a wonderful mommy," Grace said, smoothing a strand of hair away from Lily's face. "She is," Lily said, her voice small. "She always tells me the truth, even when it's hard. She said if grown-ups ever try to make me do something that feels wrong, I should trust that feeling and get away as fast as I can. She taught me our home address, my full name, her phone number, everything, in case I ever needed it in an emergency." Lily's eyes filled with tears she had been holding back for hours. "She always has a plan for everything. She would never just disappear without telling me. Something bad must have happened. She wouldn't leave me on purpose. She wouldn't." Grace pulled her into a gentle hug, letting the girl finally release the fear she had been carrying since the school gate stood empty that afternoon. "Your mommy sounds like the kind of person who thinks of everything," Grace said. "And that is exactly why I believe we are going to find her. Because she raised a daughter who did everything exactly right today. You should be very proud of yourself." Lily nodded against Grace's shoulder, exhaustion finally beginning to pull her toward sleep, despite everything happening around her. Outside, in the back seat of a car speeding through the city streets, Damien stared at Elena's note again, reading her words for what felt like the 100th time. He thought about the last time he had seen her, 8 years earlier, the argument that ended everything, the way she had looked at him, like she was already saying goodbye, even as she promised she wasn't going anywhere. He had been wrong about so much back then. He had assumed her silence after that meant she simply moved on, found a quieter life somewhere far from the chaos he built his world around. He never imagined she had been carrying his child the entire time, raising her alone, protecting her from a world Elena had once been terrified would swallow them both whole. Now that world was exactly what had taken her. Marcus sat across from him, watching his boss carefully. In 15 years of working together, he had never seen Damien this rattled. Not during wars with rival families. Not during the darkest years of building his empire from nothing. "We'll find her," Marcus said quietly. "You know we will." Damien folded the note carefully and placed it inside his jacket pocket, close to his chest. "We have to," he said. "There isn't another option." The car turned toward the clinic, toward the last place Elena had been seen, toward whatever answers waited in the dark, quiet hours ahead. Somewhere in the city, his daughter slept for the first time in hours, finally safe enough to let her guard down. And somewhere else entirely, Elena waited, hoping the message she had prepared for years, just in case, had finally reached the one person she always believed would come. It had. And nothing in this city was going to stop him from finishing what she started. The clinic parking garage was empty, except for Damien's men and 2 security guards, who looked far too nervous for people who had done nothing wrong. Damien walked through the dim concrete structure with Marcus close behind, studying every corner, every angle, every place a camera should have caught something and did not. "Show me exactly where her car was parked," Damien said. One of the guards pointed toward a space near the exit ramp, close enough to the street that anyone watching from outside could have seen her walk to her vehicle without needing to step inside the garage at all. "And you're certain the cameras went dark right before she reached this spot," Damien said, not really asking, more confirming what he already suspected. 90 seconds before, sir," the guard said. "The system shows a total blackout across 3 cameras at exactly the same second. That doesn't happen by accident. Someone accessed the control panel remotely." Marcus crouched near the space where Elena's car had been parked, running his fingers along a faint mark on the concrete, a scuff that could have come from tires breaking hard or from something being dragged. "Whoever did this knew the layout," Marcus said. "They knew which cameras to hit, they knew her schedule, and they knew exactly when she would be alone. This wasn't random. This was planned for days, maybe longer." Damien felt his jaw tighten. Someone had been watching Elena long enough to understand her habits down to the minute. That kind of patience did not belong to petty criminals or opportunists. That belonged to someone who wanted something specific and was willing to wait for the right moment to take it. "Pull every camera within 4 blocks of this garage," Damien ordered. "Traffic cameras, store cameras, anything. Somebody drove her out of here, and cars don't disappear into thin air." While his men worked, Damien stepped away from the group, staring out at the quiet street beyond the garage entrance. 8 years of silence between him and Elena, and now, within hours of her disappearing, an entire piece of his past life had come rushing back, carrying secrets, danger, and a daughter he never knew existed. He thought back to their final conversation all those years ago. Elena had discovered the truth about what he really did, not the version he tried to soften for her, but the full weight of it, the deals, the enemies, the constant threat that came with the world he built. She had begged him to consider leaving it behind, and when he could not give her the answer she needed, she left instead. He always assumed she left because she stopped loving him. Now he understood the truth was far more complicated. She left to protect a child she had not even told him about, choosing a quiet, hidden life over the constant danger that surrounded him. And she had done it alone, for 7 years, without asking him for anything. Marcus approached again, phone in hand. "We have something." A car matching her vehicle's description was caught on a traffic camera 2 blocks from the clinic, moving faster than normal traffic flow. There was a second car following close behind. "Can we identify either vehicle?" "The lead car is registered to a shell company we don't recognize yet. We're running it now. The second car, the one following, we've seen before. It belongs to a group connected to Salvatore Greco." The name hit Damien like a physical blow. Greco. An old rival from years before Elena had even entered his life. A man whose ambitions Damien had crushed more than once. A man who had spent years nursing old grudges and waiting for an opportunity to strike back. Greco doesn't know about Elena, Damien said slowly, thinking out loud. There's no way he could. Unless someone told him, Marcus finished. Someone who knew about your past with her, and knew exactly how valuable that information would become, the moment Greco realized you had a daughter he could use against you. Damien's mind raced through the list of people who might have known about Elena all those years ago, people who had faded from his life since then, people whose loyalty he had never questioned because he never had a reason to. Somewhere along the way, someone had either remembered or discovered and had sold that memory to the one man who would know exactly what to do with it. Get everyone we have watching every property connected to Greco, Damien ordered. Warehouses, safe houses, anywhere he might be holding someone he wants kept quiet. I want a full list within the hour. As his men dispersed to carry out the search, Damien returned to the car, replaying every detail Lily had shared with him earlier. Her mother checking the windows that morning, making her repeat the emergency plan 3 times instead of the usual one. Elena had sensed something coming, maybe not exactly what, but enough to prepare her daughter for the worst. He wondered how long she had lived like that, always half expecting the past to catch up with her, always keeping one eye on the door. It broke something in him to imagine Elena carrying that fear alone for years, raising their daughter under the constant shadow of a threat she never fully escaped. His phone buzzed. Grace, checking in from the safe house where Lily had finally fallen asleep after hours of holding herself together. She's resting, Grace said quietly over the phone. She asked about her mother, right before she drifted off. I told her you were doing everything you could. Keep the security tight, Damien said. Nobody gets near that house unless I personally clear them. Understood. Damien. Grace paused. That little girl loves her mother more than anything I've ever seen in a child that age. Whatever happened today, whoever is responsible, you need to bring Elena home, not just for your sake, for hers. Damien closed his eyes for a brief moment, absorbing the weight of his sister's words. I know, he said quietly. I'm not stopping until she's safe. He ended the call and turned his attention back to the search unfolding around him. Reports began coming in from his people scattered across the city, most leading nowhere. Dead ends and false leads that wasted precious time. But patience had always been one of Damien's strengths, the same patience that had built his organization from nothing, the same patience Greco had apparently learned to use as a weapon against him. Hours passed. The city outside grew quieter as night deepened, though inside Damien's world, everything remained in motion. Reports narrowed the search, eliminating properties one by one, until a single name surfaced repeatedly, across multiple sources, an old warehouse near the industrial district that Greco's organization had quietly acquired through a shell company months earlier. It's not on any of his usual properties, Marcus said, studying the report. That's probably the point. He wanted somewhere off the radar, somewhere none of your usual channels would think to check. Damien studied the address on the screen, a location on the edge of the city, surrounded by abandoned buildings and empty lots, the kind of place chosen specifically because nobody would ask questions if something happened there. Get a team ready, Damien said, but nobody moves until we know for certain she's inside. I'm not risking a mistake that puts her in more danger. As the preparations began, Damien allowed himself one quiet moment to think about Elena, wherever she was in that warehouse, hopefully still safe, hopefully still holding on to the same strength that had carried her through 7 years of raising their daughter alone. He thought about the note in his pocket, her handwriting, her trust in him despite everything that had happened between them. She had believed he would come. Now all that mattered was proving her right. The warehouse waited in the darkness ahead, holding whatever answers and whatever dangers lay within its walls. Damien gathered his men, checked every detail of the plan one final time, and prepared to step into a confrontation that would determine not just Elena's fate, but the future of the family he never knew he had until a few short hours ago. Somewhere behind him, in a quiet safe house across the city, his daughter slept peacefully for the first time all day, unaware of how close her father was getting to bringing her mother home. And somewhere ahead, in the cold silence of an abandoned building, Elena waited, holding on to the same hope that had guided every decision she made for the past 7 years. The next few hours would decide everything. The warehouse sat silent under a thin layer of fog, its metal walls rusted from years of neglect. Damien crouched behind a stack of shipping containers with Marcus beside him, watching 2 guards pace slowly near the main entrance, rifles slung casually over their shoulders, unaware that they were already being watched. 2 out front, Marcus whispered. Our people spotted at least 4 more inside. No visual on Elena yet, but there's a light on in the back office. If she's here, that's probably where they're keeping her. Damien studied the layout, calculating angles, exits, the fastest path to that office without triggering an alarm that could put Elena in immediate danger. Years of navigating exactly this kind of situation had trained his mind to move quickly under pressure, but this time felt different. This time, every decision carried weight he had never felt before. We move quiet, Damien said. Nobody fires unless fired upon. I want her out of there without this turning into something that puts her at more risk than she already is. His men fanned out around the perimeter, moving with practiced precision through the shadows. Within minutes, the 2 guards near the entrance had been dealt with quietly, and Damien's team slipped into the warehouse through a side door that had been left unlocked, either through carelessness or overconfidence on Greco's part. Inside, the warehouse was mostly empty, stacks of old crates lining the walls, dust thick in the air, the kind of place that had clearly been abandoned by legitimate business long before Greco's people repurposed it. Damien moved carefully through the maze of crates, following the direction of the light Marcus had spotted from outside. They found the back office exactly where expected, a small room with a single window and a door slightly ajar. Damien signaled for his men to hold position while he approached alone, wanting to be the one to reach Elena first, wanting her to see a familiar face the moment she realized rescue had finally come. He pushed the door open slowly. The room was empty. A single chair sat in the center, rope still looped loosely around one leg, evidence that someone had recently been held there. A half-empty glass of water sat on a small table nearby, along with a folded blanket that looked like it had been used recently. But there was no sign of Elena, and no sign of anyone else. She was here, Damien said, his voice tight with controlled frustration. Recently, we missed her by minutes, maybe less. Marcus stepped into the room, examining the scene carefully. This was staged, he said slowly. Look at how the rope is positioned. It's too loose. Someone wanted us to think she was restrained here, but this setup doesn't match someone actually being held against their will for hours. Damien's mind raced through the implications. If the scene had been staged, it meant Greco anticipated exactly this kind of search, meant he had likely moved Elena the moment his people detected activity near the property, meant this entire warehouse had been nothing more than a delay tactic designed to waste precious time while the real location remained hidden. He's playing us, Damien said, anger sharpening every word. He knew we'd find this place eventually. He wanted us here, wasting time, while he moves her somewhere we won't think to check. A soft buzz interrupted his thoughts. Marcus's phone lit up with an incoming message, his expression shifting from focus to concern as he read it. It's from an unknown number, Marcus said, turning the screen toward Damien. Sent directly to my phone. Someone wanted us to see this. Damien read the message twice, a short, cold demand. Greco wanted a meeting. Alone, no interference, in exchange for Elena's safe return. The location and time were listed below, along with a warning that any attempt to track the message or bring additional men would end badly for everyone involved. This is exactly what he wants, Marcus said carefully. A trap disguised as an opportunity. I know, Damien said, but I don't have a choice. If there's any chance this gets her home safely, I have to take it. Before making any decisions, Damien returned to the safe house to check on Lily, needing to see her, to reassure himself that at least one part of this nightmare remained safe and unharmed. He found her awake, sitting cross-legged on the couch beside Grace, a cup of warm milk cradled in her small hands. Did you find her? Lily asked immediately, her eyes wide with hope and fear tangled together. Damien knelt in front of her, choosing his words carefully. Not yet, but we're very close. I need you to be brave a little longer, okay? Can you do that? Lily nodded slowly, though her lower lip trembled with the effort of staying strong. Mommy always says brave doesn't mean not being scared. It means doing the right thing, even when you are scared. Damien felt something tighten in his chest at those words, so clearly Elena's, passed down to a daughter who carried her mother's strength even in the darkest moments. Your mommy sounds like a very wise woman, he said softly. She is, Lily said. She knows everything. A small, hopeful smile flickered across her face. Almost everything. Damien managed a faint smile of his own, grateful for even that small moment of lightness amid the tension consuming everything else. He sat beside her for a few minutes, listening as she talked about small, ordinary things, her favorite color, a drawing she had made at school that week, the name of a stuffed rabbit she had left at home, and hoped someone would remember to bring her eventually. Ordinary things. Small, precious pieces of a childhood that deserved protection from everything happening around it. I have to go now, Damien said eventually, standing and brushing a gentle hand over her hair. But I promise you, I am going to bring your mother home. I know, Lily said simply, the same unwavering trust in her voice that had carried her across the city with nothing but a folded note and her mother's careful instructions. Mommy said you would. Outside, Marcus waited with the car already running, expression grim as he reviewed the details of the meeting location one final time. It's an old shipping yard on the east side, Marcus said. Isolated, easy for Greco's people to control the area, hard for us to get additional support in without being seen. I go alone, Damien said firmly. Those were his terms. Damien, this reeks of a setup. You walk in there without backup, and there's a real chance you don't walk back out. If I don't go, Elena doesn't come home. I've already lost 7 years I didn't know I was missing. I'm not losing anything else. Marcus studied his friend for a long moment, understanding the decision had already been made, and arguing further would only waste time neither of them had. Then we do it smart, Marcus said. You go in alone, like he wants. But I position teams at a distance, close enough to respond fast if things go wrong, far enough that his people won't spot us during the exchange. Damien nodded, appreciating the compromise even as tension coiled tighter in his chest with every passing minute. As the car pulled away from the safe house, heading toward the meeting point Greco had chosen, Damien allowed himself one last look back at the building where his daughter slept, safe for now, waiting for a mother who deserved to come home to her. The city passed by in a blur of streetlights and shadows, each mile bringing him closer to a confrontation that would test everything he had built his reputation on: patience, control, and the willingness to do whatever necessary to protect what mattered most. Somewhere across the city, in a location still unknown to him, Elena waited, held by a man who saw her only as leverage, a piece in a game far bigger than herself. She had spent 7 years protecting their daughter from exactly this kind of danger, and now, through no fault of her own, that danger had found her anyway. Damien gripped the folded note still tucked inside his jacket, Elena's handwriting a constant reminder of the trust she had placed in him, the trust that had carried across 7 years of silence straight into this moment. He was not going to let that trust go unanswered. The shipping yard came into view ahead, dark and quiet, the perfect place for secrets to change hands and mistakes to become permanent. Damien steadied himself, preparing for whatever waited inside, knowing that everything, Elena's safety, Lily's future, the family he never expected to have, depended on what happened in the next few hours. He stepped out of the car alone, walking toward the shadows ahead with steady, deliberate steps, carrying nothing but his resolve and the promise he had made to a 7-year-old girl who believed, without any doubt, that he would bring her mother home. The shipping yard stretched out before him, rows of stacked containers casting long shadows under the dim security lights scattered across the property. Damien walked slowly through the maze of metal structures, every sense heightened, every step calculated. He had walked into dangerous situations more times than he could count, but never with stakes this personal, never with this much riding on the outcome. A figure emerged from between 2 containers ahead, flanked by 3 armed men. Salvatore Greco looked exactly as Damien remembered him, older now, gray threading through his dark hair, but the same calculating smile still fixed firmly in place. Damien Cross, Greco said, spreading his arms wide as though greeting an old friend rather than a man he had just kidnapped. It has been a long time. Where is she? Damien's voice carried no patience for pleasantries. Straight to business. I always respected that about you. Greco gestured toward a container behind him, its door slightly open. She's safe, for now. Whether she stays that way depends entirely on how the next few minutes go. I'm here alone, exactly as you asked. Let her go. Greco chuckled, shaking his head slowly. You misunderstand the situation, Damien. This was never just about a simple exchange. You took territory from me 8 years ago that I have never stopped wanting back. I intend to leave here tonight with what I came for, and she stays with me until I get it. Damien felt his control slipping, replaced by a cold, focused anger. You said this was an exchange, her safety for a meeting, nothing more. I lied, Greco said simply, the smile never leaving his face. You should know better than to trust the word of an old rival, especially one you humiliated so publicly all those years ago. Behind Greco, the container door swung open further, and Damien caught his first glimpse of Elena in 8 years. She looked tired, a bruise forming along one side of her face, but her eyes carried the same fierce determination he remembered, unbroken, despite everything she had endured over the past several hours. Damien, she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. Don't listen to him. Don't give him anything. Quiet, one of Greco's men snapped, though he made no move toward her, clearly under instructions to keep her intact until Greco decided otherwise. Damien's eyes moved between Elena and Greco, calculating every possible outcome, every risk, every variable that could determine whether this ended with Elena walking free or with a violence that would ripple far beyond this single night. You want territory, Damien said slowly, buying time while his mind worked through the situation. Fine, we can discuss terms, but she walks free first, before any agreement is finalized. You think I'm a fool, Greco said, his tone hardening. The moment she's free, you have no reason to give me anything. No, Damien, this is how it works. You agree to my terms first, in writing, witnessed by my people. Then, and only then, does she go free. Damien recognized the trap for exactly what it was. Agree to terms under duress, terms that would weaken his entire organization, and hand Greco leverage that could be used against him indefinitely. There was no version of this negotiation that ended well if he played by Greco's rules. That's not going to happen, Damien said flatly. Greco's expression darkened. Then perhaps you don't value her as much as I assumed. I value her enough to know you're not walking away from this with anything, Damien said, his voice low and controlled. You made one mistake tonight, Greco. You assumed I would come here without a plan of my own. Greco's confidence flickered for just a moment before he caught himself, glancing toward his men, as if searching for reassurance. Empty threats won't help her, Damien. They're not empty. The signal Damien gave was subtle, barely noticeable, a slight shift in his stance that Marcus had been watching for through a concealed earpiece from a position several hundred yards away. Within seconds, the quiet shipping yard erupted into controlled chaos, as Damien's positioned teams moved in from multiple directions, catching Greco's men completely off guard. Damien used the confusion to move, closing the distance toward the container where Elena stood, ducking low as shouts and movement filled the yard around him. Greco's men, trained to expect a lone, unarmed negotiator, scrambled to respond to a threat they had not anticipated. Elena, Damien called, reaching the container just as one of Greco's men turned toward him, weapon raised. Marcus's voice crackled through the earpiece, confirming the perimeter had been secured, confirming his team had the situation contained. Damien moved quickly, disarming the guard before he could react, years of experience guiding every motion with practiced precision. Elena rushed toward him the moment the path cleared, and for a brief, suspended moment, the chaos around them faded entirely. You came, she said, breathless, relief and disbelief mixing together in her voice. I told you I would, Damien said, though she had never actually heard him say it, only trusted, across 7 years of silence, that he would. Greco's voice rose above the commotion, furious and desperate, as he realized his plan had unraveled completely. This isn't over, Damien. You think this changes anything? You think taking her back fixes what you did to me all those years ago? Damien turned toward him, shielding Elena instinctively as more of his men moved to secure the area. It's over, Greco. Whatever grudge you've been carrying, it ends tonight. If you come near her, near my daughter, near anyone I care about ever again, there won't be a warehouse or a shipping yard hidden enough to protect you. Greco's men, recognizing the situation had turned entirely against them, began lowering their weapons as Damien's team closed in from every angle. Within minutes, the confrontation that could have ended in disaster resolved with Greco and his remaining men detained, their plan for leverage collapsing entirely under the weight of Damien's careful preparation. Elena leaned against Damien, exhaustion finally overtaking the adrenaline that had carried her through hours of uncertainty. "Lily," she said suddenly, panic flashing across her face. "Is she safe? Is she okay?" "She's safe," Damien assured her. "She's been incredible through all of this. She's the reason I found you as quickly as I did." Tears filled Elena's eyes, relief finally breaking through the composure she had maintained throughout the entire ordeal. "She gave you the note?" She walked into a room full of dangerous men, without hesitation, and handed it to me herself, Damien said softly. "She's the bravest person I've ever met." Elena laughed weakly through her tears. "She gets that from her father, whether either of you realizes it or not." As Marcus and the rest of the team finished securing the scene, Damien guided Elena toward the waiting car, his hand steady against her back, a silent promise that the danger had finally passed. The ride back through the city felt different from the tense, urgent drive that had brought him to the shipping yard hours earlier. Elena sat quietly beside him, watching the city lights pass by, processing everything that had happened in a single, impossibly long day. "I owe you an explanation," she said eventually, breaking the silence. "About why I left, why I never told you about her." "You don't owe me anything right now," Damien said gently. "Right now, all that matters is that you're safe, and Lily gets her mother back." "No," Elena said firmly, turning to face him. "I need you to understand. I didn't leave because I stopped loving you. I left because I found out what your world really was, and I was terrified of what it would mean for a child growing up inside it. I thought staying away, keeping her hidden from that danger, was the only way to protect her." Damien absorbed her words carefully, understanding settling over him, even as old wounds reopened slightly at the memory of those final days together. "And tonight proved that danger found her anyway." "I know," Elena said quietly. "I've thought about that every single day since I ran. Whether hiding actually protected her, or whether it just delayed the moment everything caught up with us regardless." The car fell into a thoughtful silence as they approached the safe house where Lily waited, unaware that the long, frightening day was finally drawing to its close. Damien glanced over at Elena, noticing the exhaustion etched into every line of her face. The same exhaustion he imagined had built quietly over 7 years of raising a child alone, while carrying the constant fear that this exact night might eventually arrive. "Whatever happens next," Damien said carefully, "we figure it out together. Both of us, for her sake." Elena studied him for a long moment, something soft and hopeful flickering behind the exhaustion in her eyes. "Together," she repeated quietly, as though testing the word after years of facing everything entirely alone. The car pulled up outside the safe house, and before Damien had even fully parked, the front door burst open, and Lily came running out into the cool night air, her small legs carrying her as fast as they could toward the car. "Mommy!" Elena was out of the car before Damien could say another word, kneeling down just in time to catch her daughter in a fierce, tearful embrace. The sound of Lily's relieved sobs, muffled against her mother's shoulder, carried through the quiet night, marking the end of a day that had tested every ounce of courage this small family possessed. Damien stood back for a moment, watching them together, allowing himself, for the first time since the note had been placed in his hand hours earlier, to simply feel the relief of a promise finally kept. The danger had passed. But everything that came next, rebuilding trust, building a future none of them had planned for, remained entirely unwritten. Morning arrived quietly at Grace's house, sunlight spilling gently through the kitchen windows as the household slowly stirred awake after the longest night any of them could remember. Elena sat at the kitchen table, wrapped in a soft blanket, watching Lily sleep peacefully on the couch nearby, finally free of the fear that had gripped her small shoulders for an entire day. Damien entered quietly, carrying 2 cups of coffee, setting one gently in front of Elena before sitting across from her. Neither spoke for a long moment, the silence comfortable despite everything unresolved between them. "How are you feeling?" he asked eventually. "Tired," Elena admitted. "Relieved. Still a little in shock, honestly. Yesterday morning, I woke up worried about a work meeting. By last night, I was locked in a shipping container, wondering if I would ever see my daughter again." Damien reached across the table, gently covering her hand with his own. "You don't have to explain any of it right now if you're not ready." "I want to," Elena said softly. "I think I've owed you this explanation for 7 years, and I'm not running from it anymore." She took a slow breath, gathering her thoughts before continuing. "When I found out about your world, really understood it, not just the version you tried to protect me from, I panicked. I kept imagining a future where our child grew up surrounded by danger, learning to recognize threats before she learned to ride a bike. I couldn't reconcile that with the life I wanted for her. And you decided leaving was safer than staying and asking me to change," Damien said quietly, not with accusation, but with understanding. "I didn't think you could change," Elena admitted, "not because I doubted you as a person, but because that world, your responsibilities, the people who depended on you, none of that simply disappears because someone asks nicely. I thought distance was the only real protection I could offer her." Damien considered her words carefully before responding. "You weren't entirely wrong," he said. "That world followed her anyway, straight into a restaurant, into the arms of a man she had never met before yesterday. Distance didn't protect her in the end. It only delayed the moment everything caught up." Elena's eyes filled with tears again, though this time they carried a different weight, grief mixed with the beginning of something like hope. "I know that now. I spent last night in that container, thinking about every decision I made, wondering if keeping her from you all these years was ever truly about protecting her, or whether it was easier than facing what staying would have required from both of us." "What would staying have required?" Damien asked gently. "Change," Elena said simply. "Real change, not just promises, but actual, permanent decisions about the kind of life we wanted to build together, and the kind of danger we were willing to accept as part of it." The kitchen fell quiet again, as both of them absorbed the weight of that honesty, years of unspoken fears and assumptions finally given voice, after everything that had happened. "I've spent this entire night thinking about the same thing," Damien said eventually. "Watching Lily walk into that restaurant, watching how brave she was, how much she has already had to learn just to survive situations no child should ever have to understand. I don't want that for her either." "What are you saying?" Elena asked carefully. "I'm saying that world can continue running without requiring my hands in every single piece of it," Damien said. "I built something powerful, but I built it without ever imagining a life beyond it. Meeting Lily yesterday changed that immediately. I don't want to spend her childhood the way I spent the last 8 years, buried in things that could easily be handled by people I trust." Elena studied him carefully, searching his expression for any hint of hesitation or doubt. She found none. "You're serious about this?" "Completely," Damien said. "I already spoke with Marcus this morning. He's more than capable of managing daily operations. I want to step back, gradually, carefully, but permanently. I want mornings that don't start with security briefings. I want to be the kind of father Lily deserves, not someone she only meets during emergencies." A fragile smile broke through Elena's exhaustion, the first genuine smile Damien had seen from her since everything began. "She would like that very much," she said softly. "She's been curious about you for years, even without knowing the details. She used to ask why we didn't have a daddy like her friends at school. I never had a good answer." "Maybe now you will," Damien said. Their conversation was interrupted gently by small footsteps padding across the kitchen floor. Lily appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from her eyes, her gaze immediately shifting between her parents sitting together at the table. "Mommy," she said softly, still processing the reality of her mother's safe return after the terror of the previous day. You're really here." Elena opened her arms immediately, and Lily rushed into them, burying her face against her mother's shoulder, as fresh tears of relief slipped down both their faces. "I'm here, baby," Elena murmured softly. "I'm never leaving you like that again. I promise." Damien watched them together, something warm and unfamiliar settling into his chest, a feeling he had rarely allowed himself to experience throughout years of building walls around every part of his life that mattered. Over the following weeks, the three of them slowly began building something none of them had ever expected. Damien gradually withdrew from daily operations, trusting Marcus and his most experienced people to manage the responsibilities he had carried alone for so long. It was not an easy transition, old habits and instincts pulling at him constantly, but each morning, he woke up in a house with Elena and Lily, reminded him exactly why the change mattered. Elena returned cautiously to her work at the clinic once security around their new home had been thoroughly established, refusing to let fear dictate every decision, even after everything that had happened. Lily started attending a new school closer to their home, one where Damien personally reviewed every safety measure without ever making his daughter feel like she was living inside a fortress. Slowly, carefully, trust rebuilt itself between Damien and Elena, conversations replacing old assumptions, honesty replacing years of silence neither of them had wanted, but both had accepted as necessary at the time. They were careful with each other, neither rushing toward promises that could not yet be fully kept, but each day brought them closer to understanding what a real future together might actually look like. One evening, months after that terrifying day had first brought them all together, Damien sat on the back porch of their new home, watching Lily chase fireflies across the yard, while Elena leaned quietly against his shoulder. "Do you ever think about how close we came to never having this?" Elena asked softly, watching their daughter's laughter fill the quiet evening air. "Every day," Damien admitted. "If she hadn't walked into that restaurant, if you hadn't prepared her the way you did, none of this exists." "I owe everything to a note I almost couldn't read through my own shock." Elena smiled, reaching for his hand. "I always believed you would do the right thing, even after everything. I just never imagined it would take something this terrifying to finally bring us all together." Lily ran back toward the porch, breathless and glowing with the simple joy of an ordinary evening, something that had felt impossibly distant only months earlier. She climbed up between her parents, settling comfortably against them both as though she had always belonged exactly there. "Are we going to stay together now?" she asked, looking between them with the same careful, searching expression she had carried into that restaurant the day everything changed. Damien wrapped an arm around his daughter, pulling her close, while Elena rested her head gently against his shoulder. "Yes," he said, his voice steady with a certainty he had never felt about anything before in his life. "We're staying together, all three of us, for good." Lily smiled, satisfied, and settled deeper into the comfort of her parents' embrace as the last light of evening faded softly over their home. Somewhere behind them, the dangerous world Damien once ruled continued running under careful new leadership, distant now, a shadow of the past rather than a constant presence in their daily lives. Ahead of them stretched something entirely new, uncertain in the way all real futures are, but built on something far stronger than fear or danger ever could be. It was built on a mother's careful preparation, a daughter's fearless courage, and a father who finally understood that the most important thing he would ever protect was not territory, or power, or reputation. It was the small, steady heartbeat of the family, sitting beside him on a quiet porch, exactly where they belonged.